Christopher Hathaway is the artistic director of the La Crosse Chamber Chorale. We chat about his past, the history of the choir, his adjusted expectations, and direction of the choir due to COVID, and what's next for the organization. You can find more conversations on our website, lacrosselocal.com. I'm Amy, and he's Brent, and this is La Crosse Local.
My name is Chris Hathaway, and I was actually born in Lubbock, Texas. My parents were both from Michigan and moved back to Michigan when I was about 2 years old. So I don't really remember anything about Texas at that time. So I always tell people I'm just from Michigan. Kalamazoo area is where I grew up and spent most of my childhood. I got into music, kind of a long story, but the abridged version, I guess, is I started, like many kids do, in sixth grade as a band kid, and I played trombone. And then it kind of brought me to high school, where I was drum major for a few years. And for a long time, that band trombone path is really what I thought I wanted to follow. And I really will say that I feel so fortunate to have had parents that, knew nothing about music, that were still very fortunate. My mom was a computer programmer, and my stepfather, who raised me, was raised on a farm and then later became a handyman. And so this idea of me wanting to be a musician was like, what's this about? But even though they had no idea what was going on, they were incredibly supportive. And I feel, really thankful for that. As far as the singing world, and choir and singing and all that, it actually, my first time singing in public was 8th grade. I was in a drama class, and looking back, I have no idea what inspired me to take a drama class in 8th grade, but I did. And there was an assignment that I had to memorize a poem and speak it in front of the whole class. And I was a bit of a procrastinator, and I thought I could just memorize something overnight, and apparently I couldn't. And so I got up there and I was like, okay, well, at least I know a couple songs. And at the time, I loved the movie The Wedding Singer with Adam Sandler. And I started trying to speak through the song at the end, Grow Old With You. But then I couldn't remember it. And so then the teacher was like, well, if you can't do this, you're going to fail this assignment. And so I was like, okay, well, then I guess I'll try to sing it, because I thought I could sing it. And as soon as I sang it, I got through it, and all of a sudden, I was just a short, chunky kid, and all of a sudden girls liked me. And I was like, hey, this is something I could get behind. And then I went into high school, and, I didn't really join choir until I was a sophomore. I was making fun of an opera singer in the hallway, and the choir director happened to hear me and drugged me into the choir room, made me join choir, and then introduced me to who was the director of choral studies at Western Michigan University at the time, where I ended up going to undergrad. And he really taught me humanity in choir, and how it can bring people from all over the world together, and how music has that sort of power. And it led me to wanting to inspire others, the way he inspired me.
You're the director of choral studies and music education at the University of Wisconsin-La Crosse. But what led you to La Crosse and being the artistic director for the La Crosse Chamber Choral?
I moved here because it was a job, just to be honest. I finished my doctorate, and I was offered 2 jobs. I applied for about 400, and I got about 6 interviews. Not really 400, that's an exaggeration. But I applied for a lot, and I got about 6 interviews, and then I got 2 job offers. And one of them was in Wisconsin, and one of them was in Arkansas. And I really didn't think Arkansas was where I wanted to be. So I took the job up here in La Crosse, at UWL. And as soon as I moved here, like within maybe a week or two, I had many people approaching me, hey, have you heard of the La Crosse Chamber Chorale? Have you heard of this ensemble? They're the real premier group in the area. So I knew I had to check them out. The ensemble did some really quality, high-level music at a really, impressive level. And so as soon as the previous conductor announced his retirement, I really felt that I would be a really great fit to kind of take the reins of that and shape that choir into a different direction, kind of taking where it started and pushing it, adding it a little bit of my personality and my thoughts about the reason for choir and what we can do, and again, bringing people together. And here I am.
So you kind of talk about putting your own spin on this organization. How did it get its start?
La Crosse Chamber Chorale and I are like about the same-ish age. It started in 1986 with someone, I believe her name is Joanne Brorson, I believe is how you pronounce it. And she was also at UWL at the time. She wanted to start a community ensemble. At the time, La Crosse had a great women's ensemble and a great men's ensemble in the city, but she felt it didn't have a good mixed choir. She started it and the Crosse Chamber Chorale was born. And she did it for 3 years until she moved. I believe she got married and then moved to North Dakota. Two people applied for the position after she left, Linnell Moss and Paul Resterholtz. He came back and gladly accepted and did it for 29 years until I took over this past year.
How did you adjust your expectations and directions for the organization due to COVID-19? I'm sure that was just like everybody. It was such a huge surprise and a huge hit.
It was crazy, for all of us having to adjust our lives in what seems like the blink of an eye. And when we're already in a transitional year, after someone, like I said, Paul, doing it for 29 years, transitional year, I'm just trying to make it through the year in a lot of ways. And the pandemic had other things in mind, so it really put a wrench in things. But I will say that the overall goals that I have for the ensemble and where I see the ensemble going hasn't really changed. It just had to be put on pause, following the guidelines of health officials, both locally as well as globally. We knew we had to stop the rehearsals and we couldn't give performances anymore and we had to cancel the rest of the season. But I'm really just hoping that the choir members and the audience and everyone kind of sees it as a time to reflect and to see how important music and the arts is to our daily lives, whether it's looking for art in the way of Netflix or, listening to our favorite music to try to get us to overcome this time in quarantine or this unique situation. And then we can really appreciate the live music once it's able to return, hopefully soon.
Do you have any sort of plans in some way where you're adjusting based on just living with COVID-19 in some capacity that maybe the choir is transitioning?
This year, we're still planning to have some sort of season. Now, it's going to be a weird season, but the hope is to do some sort of virtual event in November and then again in December, hopefully going to lead us up to another live performance in April. So in the November one, we're having some people come socially distanced with masks on, and we're going to sing like quartets and octets in person, and we're going to record them. And then there's also going to be a couple virtual choirs that we're going to do where everyone records themselves individually, and then it's put together. And we're going to have maybe like a 30-ish minute event on our YouTube channel in November, and then a similar type thing with a holiday theme in December. And then that will kind of ramp up where January, if anyone's interested in auditioning for the choir, they can sign up on our website and we'll have auditions in January, rehearsal starting in February, and then hopefully, depending on what this pandemic has in store for us, but the hope is to have a live concert again in April and May, replacing the concerts that we'd hoped to do this past April and May, now doing this coming April and May.
So if people want to follow along, potentially even sign up, where can people find out more?
So there's a couple outlets. One is just the Facebook page. I mean, we're pretty active on there. If you just search La Crosse Chamber Chorale, we'll come right up. We're really active on there. And then as well as our website. The website has tons of information, tons of great things. Any questions you have are on there. And if the question isn't on there, there is a website. You can email your questions. And that site is just simply chamberchorale.org.
La Crosse Local Podcast is a production of River Travel Media. Do you have an interview idea you would like to share with us? Message us on Facebook at La Crosse Locals. Subscribe to the La Crosse Local Podcast on your favorite podcast app. If you like us, rate us 5 stars. We thank you for it.